Well, let me check my watch. It's Thursday afternoon. It's the 11 o'clock hour of the show. That means it's time to bring back our contributor, Woody Benson. Woody Benson is a venture capitalist. He's the former CEO of MCK Communications, incubator leader, and CEO mentor. The perfect toolkit to bring to us some of the leading tech players in the field today. Woody, who do you have today? And welcome back, of course.
Thank you. Good morning, Kathleen. Good morning, Vonnie. I'm here today with Andy Palmer, and Andy specializes in the founding and acceleration of growth for startups. He loves the intersection of life sciences and information technology. He is the co-founder of Tamr, which we're going to get into, the co-founder of Vertica, which was sold to HP as their big data play. Mm-hmm. He's the founder and managing director of Co-op Labs, which is a startup club. Formerly was the head of software at Novartis, and Andy is a big-time rugby player, rugby fan.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Bloomberg, Andy.
Thanks, Woody. Great to be here.
So since last week with the announcement of the Apple Watch and the new phones and all that, I'm sure you've been spinning your wheels on coming up with ideas for your company. So what great ideas have kept you up, since these announcements?
Well, I think that the biggest thing in the Apple announcements for me was the health kit. Part. I know a lot of people are excited about the payment stuff, but for me, the health kit announcement was huge. Apple's put a lot of thought into how they were going to design health kit, and that phone being kind of the encrypted repository for everybody's health information. And all the healthcare CIOs that I talk to and all the startup folks that are working in healthcare and e-health now are really excited about this.
And where do they see they can add value in this?
Well, again, so there are apps that are going to run on top of that encrypted sort of data set with all the new digital information that's being generated by the device about the person. And so there's an infinite number of apps. And also the hospitals are really excited because they can't actually technically keep all that information in their hospital because they have to comply with all this crazy government regulations. So now the hospitals have a place to go to get all this stream of digital information about every individual, their blood pressure, their weight, you name it.
So it's no surprise that the Apple privacy announcements that have been trumpeting this week is in direct sync with the Apple Health stuff.
Those guys are brilliant. I think Cook has done a really good job on HealthKit, and I think that they're really lining this up the right way, solving a problem not only that's good for patients and for all of us, but also really, really powerful in terms of giving the healthcare CIOs, the providers, a place where they can go to get this information on individuals.
Andy, it's Kathleen here in our studio. What is Apple doing now? Are you convinced that this stuff isn't hackable? Because it seems to me every time some big, smart, wealthy, successful tech company creates something, some nefarious group of hackers somewhere in the world, for whatever reason, finds a way to break into it.
Well, when you consider the information that's going to be generated, like, my blood pressure for the last 6 months, I think it's secure enough. That it's good enough so that, somebody can't just hack in there and use that information to deny me health insurance. But, who's really going to be going after that? Really, each of us as individuals, they might be interested, but really the hackers have much bigger fish to fry. They'd rather go after Target and Citibank than each one of our own phones.
So let's go back a little bit. How did a nice kid from Bowdoin end up here?
Well, I've always been a hacker. I was the kid in high school hacking into the mini computer.
Mini computer?
Yeah,
like
right.
This
is back, PDP-11. Yeah, that was me. And, I loved it, and I learned to code writing games on the DEC platform. And so for me, technology has always been in my blood. And I just happened to take a detour and get a traditional liberal arts education. But it's really exciting. It's a great time. It's like the 90s again here. There's so much going on and so many people breaking the rules that, the companies that we see come into market right now, they're going to be the next Amazons and Googles. I mean, it's really great.
Well, this is very exciting to hear, isn't it? Not just buying things online, but actually being able to get our health care more efficiently organized, maybe even save some money, help doctors, help ourselves, and maybe break into some new areas areas of health. When you talk about hackers, people are hacking all kinds of things. We're going to continue our conversation with Woody Benson, Bloomberg Radio contributor, and Andy Palmer. He is a serial entrepreneur. Most recently, he's a co-founder of Tamr and the creator of Koa Labs. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is the Hayes Advantage. I'm Kathleen Hayes, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Sector Spider ETFs. Time to consider a stock alternative? Visit sectorspdrs.com or call 1-866-SECTOR-ETF. It's our weekly chat about technology financing. Woody Benson, Bloomberg Radio contributor, is with us, and he's going to reintroduce his special guest, who is the head of Tamr. But, Woody, I want to remind everybody it's spelled T-A-M-R, not E-R, in case they want to look it up.
T-A-M-R must have been cheaper to buy the word. Andy, give us a flyby of Koa Labs. What's it like if we went there?
Yeah, we call it a startup club, and it's really intentionally
like a rugby club.
Like a rugby club. I am a rugby guy, and I think of entrepreneurship as a full contact sport, right? The folks that are at Koa tend to be engineers, all engineers, and a lot of first timers, people that are starting their first company, and they come to Koa because they want a sense of community. Like when things are really bad and you're almost out of money and you got to fire people, you want somebody to hang out with and support you.
My type of club.
Right, exactly. And then when things are really good, right, and you close a big deal or you're getting ready to go public, you want a bunch of folks to celebrate with.
Now, I just happened to catch up with an entrepreneur the other day who's a rugby player. And I said to him, I'm interviewing a friend of mine, next week who's a rugby guy. What is it about rugby? And he told me, he said, rugby is like, unlike football, which he had a diss on, where you take a timeout to scheme, he said the scheming and collaboration of rugby takes place on the pitch.
That's right. Yeah, and every player is essentially both a coach and a captain, right? Like you have to make decisions in real time. You don't have time to sort of, get into a huddle and do this. You've got to be thinking all the time. And it's this integration of strategy and execution that I thought is a blast.
So that's mixed into the pedigree at Koa.
Yeah, it's like startups, right? In startups, you don't have time to sort of wait and go and figure out what your strategy is. Everybody's got to figure it out on the fly.
Gentlemen, I want to ask you both a question that I put to Paul Kudrowski yesterday, SK Ventures, also Bloomberg News contributor.
And
it's
a friend
about,
of mine.
Well, yeah, but it's about financing because, look, everybody, lots of startups and incubators, oh, great, and you come out with an idea, some VCs want to throw some money in it. Well, guess what? The Fed's going to start changing that game. The sea of liquidity is going to start shrinking. That's the way they're going. I just wonder. And Paul actually said he thought it would make a difference to VCs. It will make a difference to financing, and it may get tougher. It's not necessarily bad that it's a little tougher to get the funding, right? But you've been in this field, both of you, for so long. Is this going to mean that the youngsters starting out have to work a little harder and be a little more clever?
Well, I think kind of we're in a crazy time right now. We're in a real barbell of technology. On the left side, hundreds of thousands of startups because it takes nothing to start up a company. And then the far right-hand side, the very, very few, the rarefied air of all these mega financings that you see. And then you kind of juxtapose that with this Bill Gurley thing in the Journal the other day talking about San Francisco landlords demanding 10-year leases. That is the greatest, forecaddy ever of things are going to change. So I think there's probably too much hype in the system, a little too easy to get started, and I imagine a little tightening would be good.
Yeah, I think it's good. And, when we built our seed fund at Koa, we started in 08 and 09. It was a great time to finance new companies, even though the sky was falling from everybody else's perspective, because there was talent that was available. People were willing to work for less. It was a great time to start businesses. And so if we hit a recession here, if we hit a little bit of a downturn, I think the great entrepreneurs that want to start companies, they will figure out a way to get through it, even if the liquidity tightens up, which, again, it's going to happen. It happened before. It's going to happen. So.
What was your thesis of starting Tamr? Tell us the Tamr story.
Yeah, so at Tamr, my partner, Mike Stonebreaker, who's kind of a noted computer scientist. And
you're being humble. Go ahead.
Founding father of the database industry. But Mike and I, when we started Tamr, it was in response to a real problem, which is a lot of companies have a lot of information, and any individual person in one of those companies only has access to a very, very small sliver of information, what's most convenient to them. And we wanted to make all the data that's available in any company as available to every individual as, we have access to the full web when we go home and at night and we log into Google and you get access to the entire world's corpus of information. Should be the same thing inside of a company.
Now, when you say all the data, that includes data generated by machines as well as humans?
Yeah, and this dynamic with the Internet of Things coming out, where you've got all these machine-generated data every single day, it's producing an overflow of data. And any individual needs context in order to consume those things. And what the Tamr system does is kind of prepare the data and organize the data so that any individual can consume just the data that's most relevant to them, but from across the entire company.
So, Andy, is this then a way to sort of get away from people's preconceived notions? I'm very interested in metabolism and nutrition and diet and, the evils of sugar and all that, right? But for a long time, there was a dogma in that field. Fat was the enemy. Nobody got down on the sugar. Now that has changed. Guess what I'm trying to say is we know there's dogma. We know there's biases. Will this kind of data gathering allow people to advance various areas of science?
Absolutely. And one of our earliest customers at Tamr were the folks over at the Novartis Institute for Biomedical Research. And what they were using Tamr to do was create an index of all of the biological assay results that were going on, and so that each researcher, if they were doing some new research, they could actually find other researchers and other work that was going on that was related to what they were doing. And it's this ability to consume large quantities of data with very, very little effort that is really transforming the way that research is done, and also, I think, transforming the way all of us work every single day at the office.
Is this an end-user sport, or does IT need to be involved to enable a researcher to do their query?
IT needs to be involved because, again, inside the enterprise, you've got security issues, right? Like, not everybody can see all the information that's available. But one of the features that Tamr provides is a catalog so that even if you don't have access to the data, you can find the data that exists, and you can ask the person who controls access to it if you can see it.
Now, we noticed that on your recent financing, congratulations, you raised $18 million, and Google Ventures was involved.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think Google sees an ulterior use of Tamr?
Yeah, well, what's really key here is that when we first met with the team at Google, what we found is they recognized the design pattern for Tamr, which was, we call it machine-driven and human-guided data curation. They had done a very, very similar thing when they're maintaining systems like Google Maps, where at Google Maps, right, it's amazing. It's like magic, right? You go in and you find the local coffee shop in Mumbai, all the information that you want to know. How is it that accurate? The only way they do that is this aggressive use of machine learning systems and very, very tactical curation from the individual store owner who gets an email and says, hey, is this your address? You say, they say yes, and all of a sudden now that's searchable for you.
What did you learn at Novartis that gave you the insight for how you constructed Tamr, so it could serve life science type companies?
Yeah, Tamr, I've been both on the buying side and the selling side of enterprise technology. And one of the things that's really important is that the large tech vendors right now are trying to push their platforms as the way for companies to unify all their information. But if you're in the seat of a buyer or the CIO of one of these companies, what you've got is like a real mixed bag. You've got so much different variety of information that you really need something like Tamr that's independent to unify the data.
Thank you so much, Andy Palmer. Terrific to hear about Tamr, all the things it can do. CEO and co-founder of Tamr, Woody Benson, Bloomberg Radio contributor. Thank you for introducing Andy to us today on the show. That's the Hayes Advantage. Up next, healthcare, Obamacare on the hot seat again.